First and foremost, I want to thank our Lord Jesus Christ for everything He has done for me, for guiding a prideful young man down a path that ultimately showed me that fame, legacy, and recognition are not the true purpose of life. I am grateful for every victory and every defeat, both in the ring and in life. I am thankful that as my career comes to an end.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. So obviously today, when I'm recording this video, Vasiliy Lomachenko has announced his retirement from boxing. Definitely going to go ahead and react to that, my thoughts on the retirement and also his legacy. Of course, as always, before we get started, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And yeah, Vasiliy Lomachenko has now retired from boxing, 396-1 as an amateur. Fastest ever fighter to become a world champion, fastest to ever become a two-weight world champion, and then also a three-weight champion as well. You're talking about someone who fought for a world title in his second fight, became a world champion in his third fight, and that was against Gary Russell, an American fighter and a brilliant fighter at that time. So yeah, where do I really start with Vasiliy Lomachenko? I think firstly, I was actually someone that did want him to retire. I think, what happened in that Devin Haney fight, it, took a lot out of him. I think mainly emotionally. And I really saw a guy that at the end of that fight really was pretty much done with the sport. He then came back against Kambosos, and I remember in the, interview after the fight, he said that he was out of it. He was done with boxing. He didn't really want to fight anymore. He was finished with it. And it was actually his dad that said, you know what, son, come back and just, have one more fight, win the world title. And then, don't finish your career off that Devin Haney fight. He came back for Kambosos. And yeah, I remember, I remember watching that fight on ESPN Plus. And yeah, Kambosos is not great. I'll be the first one to say that. But again, even in that fight, the last fight of Lomachenko's career, you really saw, just what this guy's all about. In my opinion, the most skilled fighter that I've ever seen, and by far one of the most skilled fighters of all time. This is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He'll be going to the Hall of Fame, no doubt. And just one of the all-time greats. And like I said, I actually did want this guy to retire after what happened with Devin Haney. But reflecting on it today, I'm actually, it's sad. It's really sad to know that, I won't ever see this guy in the ring again. This is a fighter that I watched him from day one. I remember his first professional boxing fight, all the hype behind it. He had the crazy amateur record, and then coming into boxing, promoted by Bob Arum in Top Rank. And then just, what he's accomplished, what he's achieved. Some absolutely unbelievable performances. I think this is a fighter that really combines skill, footwork. He had power as well. A good jab. His angles. He was a technician, a masterful technician. Just unbelievable skill. And I remember when I was watching Floyd Mayweather when I first started getting into boxing, and he was almost playing a different game than everyone else. And Lomachenko was the same. I've never seen anything like him. Obviously there's Alexander Usyk at a higher weight class. But I think, I just think Lomachenko is just one of a kind. Never seen anyone like him. I think there are a few people in the American boxing media that, like to be a little bit disrespectful with his boxing resume. The fact that he did retire at 18-3, again, I think, anyone saying that, either, I don't really know where you're coming from. He lost his second professional fight. That's a fight that a lot of people thought that he won. There was numerous low blows by Salido. And again, who fights Salido in their second fight? It's just completely unheard of. This guy easily could have gone to, 10, 15-0, fighting, journeymen and no names on the come up. He didn't do that. This is a guy that, for the most of his career was fighting guys almost pretty much twice his size. If you look at his second professional defeat against Teofimo Lopez, again, controversial fight. A lot of people thought that was a draw. Or maybe, Lomachenko got the nod. Lomachenko was taking that fight off a bad shoulder. Teofimo Lopez is just so much bigger than him. And even in that fight, Lomachenko started so slow. but got back into that fight and was really showing Teofimo Lopez levels. I think that Teofimo Lopez won round 12, and that's probably what won him the fight. And then obviously, getting to Devin Haney, the Devin Haney defeat. And I think that's the reason why there's no more Lomachenko. Because I think that fight was, it was ridiculous. And I just, I'm sad because I just think that, 3 judges on the night have basically just robbed this guy of his glory. And I think he felt the same way as well. You have to remember with Lomachenko, he was actually scheduled to fight George Kambosos for Undisputed, a fight that, he would have won, let's be real. That fight was for Undisputed. He turned that down to go fight in the Wall, came back, had the warm-up fight with Jermaine Ortiz, and then went straight into Devin Haney. And I remember that fight, I was actually going into it quite nervous for Lomachenko. Devin Haney was undefeated, the new American upcoming guy. And the size difference was just so massive that I thought that, Haney, there's a good chance that he would win and maybe even stop Lomachenko because of the size. And I remember, I still remember it to this day. I got to the end of the fight and I was calm, I was relaxed, I was chill. I didn't think for 1 second anything of it. I thought Lomachenko won at 8-4, maybe at 7-5, but again, I was, chilling and casual after that fight. And when I hear unanimous decision to Devin Haney, I couldn't believe it. And I still remember to this day, you had the casual fans, and even the Americans as well. Americans, they normally, at least the, celebrities and casual fans, they stick to, the American fighters. I remember Cameron, I remember Nelly, saying that, it was a robbery and, Devin Haney did not win that fight. You heard guys like Oscar De La Hoya, Shakur Stevenson, and these guys have, they've got no reason to, say these things. Jorge Linares, Paulie Malignaggi, I mean, the list goes on and on. Even Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is a friend of Devin Haney. Even he said it was ridiculous. I really think that was the fight for Lomachenko that really took him out of the sport. Then there was a fight with, after Kambosos, they were talking about the Gervonta Davis fight, and I think Lomachenko was such a wizard in that ring. That he could have found a way to at least make the fight competitive. But I think Lomachenko even could have won that fight because he's such a magician. He'll come up with a good game plan. Him and his dad. They're geniuses, those two. But I just think that he was just done with the sport. I mean, I think he would have potentially won that fight, maybe a 7-5 or an 8-4 or whatever it was. And Gervonta Davis, he's the cash cow. He's undefeated, young American. Lomachenko's not getting that decision, and I just think that was what did it for him. That's what did it for him. That's why he's out the sport. So I think the ending was quite sad, but I'm very happy that he did end, with a world title, knocking out George Kambosos in a great performance. Sad, very, very sad to see Vasiliy Lomachenko go. But really, to Vasiliy Lomachenko, thank you for those amazing nights. One of the best fighters that I've ever seen, and really my favorite fighter. Love Lomachenko. Class act, humble, classy guy, and as well all that skill he had, all the technical ability, but yet heart as well. He had the heart of a lion. Never knocked out, never stopped. I don't think he ever could be. Never gave up, never quit. Fought guys twice his size. So this guy just deserves maximum credit. And I just wanted to make this video. To share my thoughts. As always, really want to hear what you guys have to say. What is your favorite Lomachenko fight, and what are your favorite memories of in my opinion, one of the best fighters that I've ever seen. So yeah, as always, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys on the next one.